The views and opinions on the Craig L. Hayes Show do not necessarily reflect those of Westgate Resorts ownership or management. And now, on with the show.
This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.
And we're back for episode 4. We're probably going to have to do about like 10 of these episodes to get in all this stuff, but we're only going to do 4 today. So we're on our final episode for the day before we decide to do another batch of them. Talking about the history of Talbot and I together doing all these different shows and all these different projects in the music industry. We've been pretty diverse on a lot of stuff, and we're up to somewhere around the 1984, 5, 6 range, right in that range.
Yeah.
And we're going to come back and start talking about that now. And so basically, we get back from the missions. You're working. I think
I was gone 85, 86.
So you were gone. I was back in Australia. I decided to go take a year hiatus out of Vegas and take the wife and my 2 kids down to Australia and live there for a year. And while I was down there, I was running one of the rooms down in Australia, the biggest convention room.
In Perth?
Yep.
Yeah.
Doing the sound, the lights, all, everything I was doing here in Vegas, but just somewhere different. There's show business everywhere. You can find it. It's not that hard. And
I know Australia has the Gold Coast and all kinds of, in all the major cities, I'm sure they have shows of every kind, different kinds, I should say. And, the Gold Coast is sort of like Las Vegas on the beach, from what I've seen. I actually have cousins all through Australia at the Gold Coast and Perth and so on. A lot of my Perth cousins work for mining companies. There's a lot of mining up north, north of Perth.
Yeah, I think Geraldton is one of the places they do a lot of that, and there's Kalgoorlie, which is a big gold mine area.
Mm-hmm.
And that's out like more towards northeast. And,
Yep. Apparently they like Maoris.
Oh.
Because I have a lot of Maori cousins working in various mining operations here and there in Australia. And that's where Rory was, actually, my cousin. So anyway, back to here. We're going into 87, 88.
Yeah, going into that where we've put back together, Kaz, and we're starting to do some stuff, but this time we started putting together a big upgrade on this guy.
Yeah.
We kept the Gauss. We went and got all these new power amps. We went professional. We decided.
We got a nice Yamaha mixer.
Yeah, big 24 channel or something like that. Big,
in a case.
In a case, and road cases that had all of our gear, and we decided to take it up to the next level, and still condensed, still had the Gauss.
Yep.
Still did all that stuff, and
it still pretty much fitted into the pickup truck.
Yeah.
But it was smaller and compact in that way, but it was much more powerful.
Yeah. It was quite the setup, I'll tell you. And so we did that for a little while. We did that for for a year, 2 years, whatever we had.
And we called it AMP, remember? AMP?
Yep, AMP.
Which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah. Decided to change the name. Kaz had run its course, I thought. And, Kaz was more of that, we're saving that name a little bit for if we ever got a radio station. It was going to be radio station KAZZ in Las Vegas.
Yes.
Because we had talked about that at one time, too.
Yeah. I used to say, Totally Unlimited Horizons, KAZZ FM 100.
All the way live from Las Vegas. Yeah.
We were just short, $1 million to make that happen.
But I figured if we kept working at 7-Eleven and a couple of places, we'd get there. It wouldn't take us long.
It's funny. We've talked about things off and on, things that we've talked about in our younger days, but we didn't have the money for. It's been interesting to see other people kind of do those ideas. And I'll give you one example. I remember talking years and years ago. I wondered why casino hotels hadn't got in on the multimedia game, and did things like, and this is way back when this wasn't happening. Why didn't they put things under one roof, like a movie theater and a recording studio and a tattoo parlor and all those things that young people would like, that were connected in some way to multimedia or hip culture,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Things they could go do while, they could go to the movies, they could go do a couple of things while mom and dad were out blowing their,
Yeah, and have a restaurant and this and that.
Yeah.
And back then hardly anyone. Well, no one had what I was talking about, what you and I were talking about. They had some restaurants, but they didn't have all the stuff that we. And then, lo and behold, years later, places like the Palms and other places started doing exactly that. The movie theaters started, becoming practically, I don't think there are any freestanding theaters left anymore. They're all integrated.
There's a couple around town, but yeah, there are very few. There aren't inside of a casino anymore.
But the Palms took that concept that I was talking about even further. They brought in I believe one of the first SSLs into Las Vegas, and they had the Palm Studio.
Yeah.
And they had like beauty salons and tattoo parlor. They had other things that were kind of connected, and a photo studio and this and that, all under one roof. And who better, right? People who have those kind of bucks, big bucks, deep pockets, and they can afford all that stuff.
Yep.
And I remember when I was talking about it to different people here and there, we're talking decades ago, a lot of times I go, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about. That's never going to happen. And, it did happen.
Well, we would talk about it and go, and I remember these conversations. We're talking in mid 80s and stuff. We were always going, why don't these places just start figuring out they can do so many more? I mean, they're focusing on just gambling,
right?
Lounges, showrooms. There's more ways to make money in these places.
Well, I think even to this day, even though the Palms did what it did, and I think the Palms right now is I don't know. I think I've heard rumors they're struggling a bit or whatever, but I don't think the concept's ever been done the way that you and I talked about, because we also talked about, okay, take it even once. Oh, nightclubs. That was another thing, that back in the day, no casinos had any nightclubs.
Yeah.
None. They were all separate.
They were all around town, but they were not in the casinos.
Right. Now they're absolutely almost only in casinos.
Exactly. Casinos don't want them anywhere else because, they're not going to be able to charge $1,000 for a bottle of whatever,
Right. So
champagne or.
But even so, I don't think still, if you and I had millions to throw around, the idea of it's still, like a really cool center that had radio station, nightclub, recording studio, even a record store. Even though CDs and whatnot have come and gone, I mean, you still have your Zia type places, where people still buy out of nostalgia records and CDs and cassette tapes and whatnot.
Yeah.
Hot Topic, tattoo parlor, hair salon, stuff that young people would gravitate toward. And you've got the media thing happening, even a I don't know, TV station, a green room, a sound stage, all under one roof.
Yeah.
It could be a really, really, really cool place. But you have to have some deep pockets.
And still have your other things there, your normal showrooms. And yeah, because, we had talked about that. It was going to be, if you're the entertainment capital of the world, then dive into the entertainment.
Yeah.
Because there's not just a showroom and a lounge in a casino. You could put everything you can imagine in there.
Right.
And
well, look at places like Studio, Area 15.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of, it's not media, it's more kind of a eclectic artsy stuff, but multiple art studios under one roof. It's kind of that same kind of a concept, but with a media angle. that I think would hit the kids, but not just the young people. Older people would like it too. You know, all the businesses could feed off of each other. You know, have the best restaurant, the best nightclub, the best recording studio, and just, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Radio station, TV station, publicity, you know, et cetera. You could create a magnet effect. Sorry, I'm going way off on a tangent here.
No. It's stuff that we had talked about though, and we were fairly young when we were talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and it's 30 years later you start seeing it. You know,
Yeah.
but that's what it was. You know, but anyways, we don't.
So after AMP, we started moving toward a recording studio.
Yep.
Right.
And that was the whole. You know, we spent a lot of time going over what would we do, because you and I were doing songs, we were working on stuff, and we were having to go to other studios that were not doing a great job with it.
Yeah.
You know, and we're like, you know, I think the magic was finally you and I went to I can't remember which one it was, DLR or one of those things, and you know, they were doing okay, but it wasn't up to what we thought it could be, stuff that we were doing.
Yeah. Well, you and I were more about really producing tracks,
Yeah.
not just recording tracks. You know, it's one thing to have some engineer, a good engineer, you know, he can know his trade and just hit the record button.
Yeah.
And the talent has to do pretty much everything.
Mm-hmm.
But you and I were more hands-on about producing the heck out of tracks.
Yeah. And you know, it was one of those magic moments where we're there and we were leaving or something, and I remember we're going, you know, we could do so much better than this stuff, you know, and we should do our own. And we were both like, yeah, maybe we should.
Yep.
And then it was, okay, but what do we do? You know, what kind of setup are we going to go? Because the next step up from where we had just, I mean, because we had already financed everything we had on the planet to upgrade, you know, AMP.
Right.
And now we're looking at, okay, let's go out and even see if we can talk, you know, the credit union into giving us even more money to go start a recording studio.
Yeah. And that was quite interesting too, right? That the credit union, Mormon credit union, Camorra, would even entertain, you know, giving us money in the way they did. I don't know too many banks that would do that.
No, but you know, we had done it right. You know, starting off with the small stuff. We started off buying small loans and then paid them off. Then got bigger loans, paid them off, then bigger loans.
Well, I remember. Do you remember Sister Kute at all?
No.
She was one of the head guns at Camorra Credit Union, and I remember we went in there one time asking, you know, because in the past we'd ask for a couple grand or $3,000 or whatever, and this time we were asking for, you know, I don't know, 10 grand or something.
It was like 20-something thousand. You know, to put the studio together, we had figured it would be $20-some thousand to
But I remember her looking through our records, and she said, "Oh, let's see, you got like 8 different loans. That one's paid. That one's paid. That one's paid. That one's paid. You know, so we had a good record."
Yeah, and that's what it was. They were like, you guys are on the money, but this, instead of these, you know, $3,000 loans and, you know, it was like, yeah, we want like 20-some thousand, you know, and that was a little stretch of just a little bit.
Yeah.
But then we came across Quentin Stevenson and his dad, who was the CEO of Big O Tires.
Yeah.
And his dad really liked the idea and liked his son being part of it, and said, hey, I'll just put the money in the bank. You take a loan against it.
Yep.
Which gave us an amazing rate. I mean, the rate, you know, instead of being, you know, 6, 7, 8%, it was like 3.5%, 4%. It was hardly anything.
Yeah.
You know, so it was manageable on that side, and that's where we started the beginning of Sound Masters Las Vegas.
Yep. And we had our first setup was the Tascam setup. We had the Tascam MS-16.
16-track reel-to-reel.
Yep. And that mixer.
It was a 20 input and 8 or 12 or whatever output mixer. But we still had everything from amp. We had those mixers. That mixer, we had we had so much gear. We just, you and I was like, well, how do we put this together? And it was like, well, give me a minute. We're going to have to figure this one out because
Yeah.
it was like, how do we combine all of this? And it took us a while.
I remember as we got into the whole 16-track multi-track thing, which was a wonderful like revelation. You're like, wow, it's so cool to have all these tracks to play with, which we quickly ran out of, right? Like because
Fast, yeah.
our songs became more and more complex. But so we figured out how we could stripe one track on the MS-16 with SMPTE, remember?
Yep.
With a SMPTE time code, and we had this MIDI clock thing that would read that and translate it into MIDI time code for the keyboard sequencers to play along with, in sync with, the reel-to-reel.
Yeah.
And so that allowed us to have virtual tracks coming off, live from the sequencers. They didn't have to go to tape.
Yep. So we had that made us so that just vocals and like guitars and stuff like that went on the tape, and everything else ran off of the MIDI sequencing and stuff like that. So yeah, we had so many keyboards all over the place. We had
Right.
drum machines. We had everything.
We had they still had the Yamaha mixer, which we used as a sub mixer for
Yeah.
all the MIDI stuff.
And then we had another mixer just for the effects.
Yep.
And and putting all that together and making it so it was quiet. You remember how dead quiet that system was too.
Yeah.
And that's all in wiring. That was just taking our time, and
And didn't we find the rack that we had it all mounted in? We got that from, wasn't that like from some?
the Sahara, I think.
Was it?
I think I came from the Sahara. Yeah, they were. My uncle Gordon had said, "Hey, we're redoing the racks," because everything was starting to go, to different, smaller smaller amps and stuff like that. So they had all these racks left over, and they said, "If you want one, take one." I was like, "I'll take one."
Yep, yep. And then we built a desk, that we put the mixer on, and
Yeah.
and we took what was my bedroom became a band, rehearsal room, then became a recording studio. And I remember the day you came in, you had hammer in hand, and he said, "Oh, we're going to start, putting up this wall in the middle of this, what was a 2-car garage." And we put up the wall that became the dividing wall between, the mixing room and the instrument room.
Yep.
Or the mic room. And we had that little small isolated room too that we
Had
built.
no air in it, and you died in about 5 minutes from overheating in it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a vocal booth, quote
Yeah.
unquote, that we never actually used that much. Occasionally, it was actually used
Yeah.
when we had to have someone isolated there. And Quentin was a very good painter. He was somewhat of a construction guy too, more of a painter.
Yeah.
So we did the basic construction, and then he did the finer details. Like he would fill in with the putty and make everything look really nice with the paint job.
Yeah. Yeah. He was in the painters union, and could just do phenomenal painting.
And then we put that carpet up on all the walls, and that looked really nice. And then we had those album covers covering the two, outer walls. And that looked really cool.
Yeah.
They gave it the vibe.
No, it was a very impressive room. Very, very clean. Very quiet. Very, very, very. Yeah. And we just rocked it out there. And it took us a while to get it to that point. But while we were still in the building of it, everything was being hooked up and being built. I mean, it was all like all this was going together, and creating the songs and getting figuring out what we're going to do there. And then we had to figure out what were we going to do, what was going to be the first song we were going to, okay, now you and I, we have this whole big system, mixers everywhere, keyboards, drum machines, reel-to-reel effects, all these things going on. What's going to be our first song? What's our first song we're going to record? It's going to be our recording.
Yep.
That's the guinea pig.
Yep.
Because you have to have something to do first, and make sure you've got all the bugs worked out, and you didn't cross a line. Because you remember how many lines there were everywhere, and oh my heavens!
Remember, Brett Hansen called it an explosion in a spaghetti factory. It's how it had so many wires everywhere
Yeah,
behind the scenes, you know.
yeah, and that's what they are, and boy, that was fun doing that and making that happen, and then but that would lead in later, and we're not going to get to in this show because we're about 5 minutes from this show being done.
Mm-hmm.
But that would lead us into doing. We want to record people, to where you and I finally, after I don't know, it wasn't that long, 4 6 months of recording others and doing customers, we finally said we're going to do our own album.
Yep. Well, I remember we had songs because I had done some songs
Yeah.
on cassette, you know, and very crude recordings, and I had some things that I had sequenced out a little bit on the various keyboards that I had, but I'd never done a full proper multi-track recording until we had that whole setup, and I think one of the first songs was Slave Driver.
That was our very first in that room where and that was the one where it was like a 7-minute song, but the point of it was we were making it was programming, which you're the boss at that stuff, the programming of the keyboards and stuff like that. I never could figure out how you were doing that stuff. I'm an audio guy. I make audio work, but I got to have someone like you give me the audio, which has always made it work with you and I.
Yeah. Yep.
So with that, it was we wanted everything to change, go to different keys, to different this, to that. It was like literally stress tested.
Yeah. We were, like you said,
It was a 7-minute stress test on making it work and seeing, if what wasn't, doing what we wanted it to, and how would we fix it. So,
and it was the guinea pig, as you said. We had to get those giant reels that were only good for like 30 minutes max.
Yep.
So you couldn't even fit too many songs on there.
Yeah,
especially if they're 7 minutes.
Yeah. But that was the whole thing. It was like, and it was just making things work, and then mixing it, and then, and figuring out, did we have, all of our studio monitors in the right places and stuff, because, were we getting the true sound out of them?
Right.
There was so much we had to do on that thing to make it, and then finally we got to the point like it's there.
Right. And but remember too, I remember one time we were recording and we had a few songs on multi-track, and then we thought, how do we mix these down? What do we mix these down onto? we had cassettes, I think, but
Yeah.
but we wanted something more robust,
And that's about the time that DAT tapes came out.
right. And we thought, now we got to go get some more money for a DAT machine, because in those days those things were
They were
stupid.
like $3,000 for a DAT player recorder. Unbelievable expensive, but yeah. But we're going to get into that, and on the next one, just to tell you what I'm kind of thinking on the next one is play some of those songs, off of our first album. I even have Slave Driver on here. We'll play a bit of that and just say this was the first one, and we'll talk about that and do our little discussion about it, and then we'll play off of Contrary to Popular Belief, some of those songs too, and not the full ones, because that's we'll just play some tracks, just some parts of tracks
right.
and stuff, because I think that'll get the picture of where we were heading. And then,
that album, I'll say, I know we're going to wait till the next episode, whatever, but I'll say that was way ahead of its time too.
Oh, way. Yeah, you didn't see anything like that come out until in the 2000s.
No.
And that came out in 93.
Yep.
And this thing was all about, I can't even remember the name of it. What's the...
We had multiple artists. We had all these different genres. We had, graphics and photos galore. We had, we did all kinds of everything from rap to ballads to rock to, kind of almost country-ish. Female, male, black, white, everything.
Yeah, we had everything on that thing, and it was like, and like I told people, no, we had some interest here and there from, labels and stuff like that, but you and I went into it early saying we're not giving up everything.
Mm-hmm.
We're not doing this just to give it away to whoever. I don't care what the offer is.
Yep.
And we heard some of that stuff before.
Yes, sir.
Anyways, that'll be the next episode. We're going to go in starting in the 91, 2, and 3, and then from there on out. And
Sounds good.
we'll do some talking about that stuff. And anyways, all right, Talbot, that's it for
Thank you, brother man.
that's it for a couple of episodes that have been awesome.
Appreciate you. Love you.
And I
You're
love
awesome.
You too, man. You're my brother. And until then, have you ever heard this guy ever talk? He talks kind of funny.
This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.